forming and solving equations. Again, there's some advice and help on Corporate Maths 115. You can go and access that. What we're going to try and do here is we'll be forming an equation from either a diagram or from a text-based question, and then trying to solve it out. If we can, and if it's relevant, pictures often help. So drawing a sketch can give you an idea of what's going on. The equations that we create could be linear or quadratic. They could involve fractions. So we need to use the techniques that we've looked at already to try and figure that out. And generally speaking with this, any solutions by trial and improvement. So trial and improvement is basically where you make a guess, and you see how that works, and then you try a better guess and keep going. Those, we can't really do that. You can't just guess the answers by testing numbers. So this example, triangle is 3 sides, 2x plus 1 over 3 and x over 2. The perimeter is 9. Form an equation and solve it. So here's one where a picture will definitely help. So I'm just going to draw any triangle, and 2, x plus 1 over 3 and x over 2. So those are my 3 sides. Now, perimeter we're told. So the perimeter I know is the distance all the way around the outside. So if I add these 3 together, the answer will be 9. So that's how we're going to form our equation. So x plus 1 over 3 plus x over 2 plus 2 equals 9. Now, earlier we looked at solving equations with fractions, and we said that it's best to write everything as a fraction with a common denominator. So x plus 1 over 3 is a fraction, x over 2 is a fraction, 2 and 9 aren't, but we can change those into fractions by putting them over 1. So our denominators are 3, 2 and 1, and the common denominator there will be 6. So what we need to do is write everything as a fraction out of 6. So x plus 1 over 3, to get from 3 to 6 we multiply by 2. So we'll multiply x plus 1 by 2, and the way we do that is write it as 2 upon x plus 1. To get from 2 to 3, or 2 to 6, sorry, we'll multiply by 3. So x multiplied by 3 is 3x. To get from 1 to 6, we multiply by 6, and that's going to be the same for the 2 and the 9. So 2 6s are 12, and 9 6s are 54. Because all the denominators are the same, we can drop them. So we've got 2 brackets x plus 1 plus 3x plus 12 equals 54. Let's expand the bracket. So multiply 2 into x plus 1 to get 2x plus 2 plus 3x plus 12 equals 54. So our next step is to collect like terms. So we have a 2x and a plus 3x and a 2 and a plus 12. So that gives us 5x plus 14 equals 54. What we need to do is take away 14 from both sides, and we get 5x equals 40, and then divide by 5, and we get that x equals 8. So x is 8. Example 7, using the diagram below, form an equation to solve to find x. So we've got 4 angles being marked, and we're told the total angles in a quadrilateral is 360. Hopefully that's not news to us. So if we add the 4 angles, the answer will be 360. So we've got 2x plus x plus 10 plus 50 plus 2x. So those are the 4 angles. So the 2x, the x plus 10, 50, and the 2x. And those 4 angles will add to 360. If we collect the like terms, on the left we've got a 2x and an x and another 2x, and we've got 10 and 50. So what we'll be left with is 2x plus x plus 2x is 5x plus 60 equals 360. We can take away 60 from both sides, and we get 5x equals 300. And then to get what 1x is, we divide both sides by 5, and we get that x equals 60 degrees. And example 8, the sum of the squares of two consecutive positive integers is 113. Now, if we think about our positive integers, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And we're not sure which integer we have, so let's call it n. And then the one after that, if we think about it in terms of the numbers here, to get from one term to the next, we add 1. To get from 2 to 3, we add 1. 3 to 4, we add 1. So if n is our first integer, the one after that is going to be n plus 1. Okay, so those are our two consecutive integers. And we're told that the sum of the squares, so n squared plus n plus 1 squared. So that's going to be the square of the first plus the square of the second. And that equals 113. So n squared is n squared. N plus 1 squared, that's a bracket multiplied by itself. So we can write it out twice. And the answer is going to be 113. And then we can expand these double brackets using FOIL. So the first, outer, inner, last. So n times n is n squared. N times the 1 is 1n. Plus another 1n plus 1 equals 113. And that simplifies to 2n squared plus 2n plus 1 equals 113. And what we know is that quadratic equations must equal 0. So if we take 113 away from both sides, what we get is 2n squared plus 2n minus 112 equals 0. Now, all our numbers are multiples of 2, so we can actually divide by 2 to make an easier quadratic equation of n squared plus n minus 56 equals 0. For that, the sum is 1 and the product is minus 56. So the numbers that add to 1 and multiply to minus 56 are going to be 8 and minus 7. So we can go straight to our brackets because it's single n squared of n plus 8. And n minus 7 equals 0, which means n plus 8 is 0, or n minus 7 is 0, meaning that n equals minus 8, or n equals 7. Now, in the question it said that the numbers were consecutive positive integers, so minus 8 is not positive, so it can't be that one, which means n must be 7. And if n is 7, then the term after that, the consecutive one, so n plus 1, is equal to 8. So our two numbers then are 7 and 8. Example 9, the sum of the squares of two consecutive odd numbers. So odd numbers, we're thinking about 1, 3, 5, and 7. If our first odd number is n, then the next odd number is 2 away. So to get from 1 to 3, add on 2. 3 to 5, add on 2. 5 to 7, add on 2. So if our first one is n, the next one is going to be n plus 2. So the sums of the squares, so we're going to have n squared plus n plus 2 squared is 394. So a bracket squared is repeated, n plus 2 times n plus 2 equals 394. So that's n squared plus, expanding out the bracket, so n times n is n squared, n times 2 is 2n, 2 times n is 2n, and 2 times 2 is 4. That equals 394. Collecting terms, we get 2n squared plus 4n plus 4 is 394. But again, we've got a quadratic equation which must equal 0. So if we take away 394 from both sides, what we get is 2n squared plus 4n minus 390 equals 0. Again, we can see all numbers are even, so if we divide by 2, divide everything by 2, we get n squared plus 2n minus 195 is equal to 0. So we need to try and factorise that. Our sum is 2 and our product is minus 195. And the two numbers that multiply to minus 195 and add to 2 are 13 and 15, and we need the 13 to be negative so that the sum is positive. We can go straight to the brackets, so n minus 13 and n plus 15 equals 0, so n minus 13 is 0, or n plus 15 is 0, meaning that n is equal to 13, or n equals minus 15. So the next number, the next consecutive number, if 1 is 13, n plus 2 is going to be 15, and n plus 2 could also be minus 13. Now this time we weren't told whether the numbers were positive or not, so we have two options. So we could have 13 and 15 are consecutive odd numbers whose squares and sum is 394, but also minus 15 and minus 13 also works there. Example 10, a girl completes a journey of 35 kilometers at u kilometers per hour. If she was to increase her speed by 6, she would complete the journey 45 minutes quicker. Find her original speed. Now for this, we're dealing with speed. We've got distances and times. So it's important to think that speed equals distance over time. That's our speed, distance, time triangle. And the units are kilometers and hours and kilometers per hour. So what we would need to do is change 45 minutes into an hour, which is 3/4 of an hour. Okay, now for this, we know that the time is different. So to work out time, it's distance over speed. So distance is going to be the same, it's 35 kilometers, and divided by u. So that's how long it takes the girl initially. But if she was to increase her speed by 6, then the time taken would have been 35 over u plus 6. And we know that's going to be quicker. So if we subtract our two times, so if we subtract our 35 over u and our 35 over u plus 6, the answer will be 3/4 of an hour. And then that's going to be our equation. So 35 over u minus 35 over u plus 6 equals 3/4. So we've got fractions and equations, so what we need to do is find the common denominator. And the common denominator is going to be found by multiplying the 3 together. So it's going to be 4u times u plus 6 and 4u times u plus 6 and 4u times u plus 6. So the first fraction has the u, so we need to multiply it by 4 and u plus 6. So we'll have 4u plus 6 times 35. The next one we're going to need 4u and 35, and we'll have 3 and u plus 6. So the denominators are the same, so we can ignore those. And then we've got 4u plus 6 times 35 minus 4u times 35 equals 3u times u plus 6. So 3 times u is just 3u. If we expand out the brackets, what we have, the first one we've got 4 times 35. We could do that first of all to give 140. And then multiplied by u plus 6 is going to be 140u plus 840 minus, so 4u times 35 is 140u, is going to be 3u squared, and then 3u times 6 is 18u. The left simplifies to 840 equals 3u squared plus 18u. So for a quadratic equation we must make it equal 0. So we can write it as 3u squared plus 18u minus 840 is equal to 0. And all these numbers are multiples of 3, so we can divide 3 by 3 to get u squared plus 6u minus 280 equals 0. So I've divided by 3 there. And then I've got a sum and product, where the sum is 6 and the product is minus 280. And our two numbers that add to 6 and multiply to 280 or minus 280 are going to be 20 and 14, with the 20 being positive and the 14 being negative. So we can go straight to our brackets. because it's single u squared. So we've got u plus 20 and u minus 14 equals 0. So u plus 20 is 0, or u minus 14 is 0. Given answers of u equals minus 20 and u equals 14. But u equals minus 20 and negative, so it doesn't really make sense. So u must equal 14. So the initial speed was 14 kilometers per hour. And finally, example 11. A right angled triangle has a perimeter of 43 and the length of the hypotenuse is 19. Find the length of the shorter sides, giving your answer to 2 decimal places. So first of all, we're going to draw a triangle. It's a right angled triangle. And we know the hypotenuse is 19. And let's call this base x. Now what we know, the perimeter is 43. So that means x plus 19 plus, let's call it a question mark, is equal to 43. So the question mark is going to be 43, take away x, take away 19. So the question mark is 24 minus x. Okay, now we've got an expression for the height in terms of x. We've got our 3 sides, and we know in Pythagoras' theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where c is the hypotenuse and a and b are the other 2 sides. So putting that information in, we've got a is 24 minus x, b was x squared, and that equals 19 squared. A bracket squared, we need to repeat that, so 24 minus x upon 24 minus x plus x squared equals 19 squared. 24 times 24 is 576. Then we've got a minus 24x minus another 24x plus an x squared. So whenever we do minus x times minus x on our FOIL, we get a plus x squared. And 19 squared is 361. So if we collect the terms, we've got, there's plus another x squared in there, sorry. So we've got 2x squared minus 48x plus 576 equals 361. Now I'm just going to go back because I'm not sure that's clear. So 24 times 24 is 576. 24 times x is minus 24x. Minus x times 24 is minus 24x. Minus x times x is plus x squared, and then there's this other plus x squared which I had originally forgotten about. So that's where that's coming from. And then the 2x squareds join to give 2x squared. Minus 24 take away 24 is minus 48. So now we've got a quadratic equation which to solve must equal 0. So we could write it as 2x squared minus 48x plus 576 minus 361 is 0. 576 take away 361 is 215, so we have 2x squared minus 48x plus 215 equals 0. Now for this, sadly we don't have any numbers that whenever we do the sum and product, so the sum is minus 48 and the product is 430. Sadly we don't have any numbers that works, so we have to use a quadratic formula, which is x equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, where a is equal to 2, b is minus 48, so minus b is positive 48, and c is 215. So if we substitute those in to the quadratic formula, we get that x equals minus b, so that's 48, plus or minus the square root of minus 48 squared, but to do that we need to put it in a bracket, minus 4 times 2 times 215, all over 2 times 2. So x is going to be 48 plus or minus the square root of 584 over 4. To get the 584, I've squared minus 48, and just in my calculator then done minus 4 times 2 times 215. So putting this into my calculator, I get that x equals 18.04 or 5.96. So those are my two possible options. We need to then work out what the corresponding side is. So the other side was 24 minus x, and if x is 18.04, we get that that side is going to be 5.96, and if x was equal to 5.96, we get the other side to be 18.04. So these 18.04 and 5.96, they are the other two sides of the triangle.